Yes, it'll be a free kick to Dax. She's going to kick a goal after the siren here. 2,685 in the house. Port Adelaide led by 4 points at quarter time. Brisbane by 13 at half time. Brisbane by 19 at 3/4 time. The third AFLW player to play 100 games. Oh, and she's into the post. We wanted to see the celebration, and that's a lovely touch. Indy Tahoe, former premiership teammate with Bree Conan. Congratulations, Bree, it's her day.
Alrighty, hello and good evening. Welcome to the CREEDCAST. As always, thank you for joining us here. It is just me again tonight as Jamie continues his podcast paternity leave, but you will hear from him as he has popped his thoughts through for a little voice note that I'll play later on in the podcast. When it comes to the votes, you'll have a few thoughts on the weekend that was for our Port Adelaide ladies, as well as his votes as well. So stick around for that later in the episode. You'll get his thoughts. But for now, it is just me, Dave, your host, here on Tuesday, the 14th of October, looking back to the weekend that was in Port Adelaide footy. And unfortunately, it was, once again, a loss for our ladies in what has been a tough season, playing a lot of teams up above us and well in the finals reaches. Not really getting embarrassed by anyone, but unfortunately, we're just finding that golfing class that we've still got to overcome in the coming months and years. Year ahead really is going to be quite important. But yes, we go up to Queensland and face the Brisbane Lions in what were some trying conditions. I think it was 36-37 at one point during the day on Saturday. I think it was around 32-33 when this game kicked off. So there was longer, hot weather policies were in place. I think a longer break at the quarter time and halftime intervals at least. I don't know if that carried through to the 3/4 time, but yes, they were trying conditions. I think we handled the conditions okay, but unfortunately, it was really just the chasm in skills and execution and structure that have plagued us all year. Coming up against these sides that are clearly a step above us in how they set up and just how good they are with the ball in hand. It was a scoreline in the end that was a little bit more probably extensive than I was expecting. At a certain point during the game, it felt like we were going to be able to keep it closer than it ended up being. But yes, it was 9-8-62 to our Brisbane, obviously, to our 4-9-33. So inaccuracy plagues us a little bit there, which is partly due to maybe some of the lack of efficiency inside 50, somewhat affecting our opportunities to score versus their ability to just find some decent goal-scoring opportunities and convert them as well. And they just scored a couple of good ones towards the end there as well anyway, so that helped them out as well. But, an unfortunate loss, that one that may be expected by a lot of us if we were being truly objective. But I think we all went into this one with a modicum of hope that we could go up there and put on a performance. And to be fair, I think we did, particularly in that we started well, actually had a fair bit of the ball in that first, probably opening half of the first quarter. Got ourselves a goal and got ourselves ahead, and then we're still ahead at the end of the first quarter. Brisbane did start kind of coming into the game, and they just held sway obviously the predominant wind direction ends of the ground were the end that the advantage end was the end that we had in the first and third quarters. So, and we've found this in a few occasions this year when teams, when there is, and AFLW with the grounds being a little bit more suburban in nature, does allow factors like strong wind direction and whatnot. I mean, we see this in AFL men's anyway, but we see it more in the suburban grounds. Conditions and how you utilize the advantage end is a bit of a thing, and you saw Brisbane try to kind of work their way down. Like when they were not going towards the advantage end, they just had a game plan and structure that allowed them to stifle us in the defensive end, and then kind of just they weren't forcing the ball down the ground. They were trying to work their way down via a very, very good handball game. Utilising the kicks when they could. I think the short kick versus long kick numbers, we were definitely had a lot more long kicks, which is just part of our game. We kick the ball more than we do handball, obviously, and basically 3 well, if we look at our disposal number quickly, I won't go into too many stats, but we have 200 disposals exactly for the match. 149 of those are kicks, so basically it's a 3/4 kick to handball ratio as far as whereas theirs is they have 278 disposals, so they have 78 more disposals for us in the game than us in the game, and 164 of those are kicks. So they only have 15 more kicks than us, but the handballs 114 to 51. It is just we need to figure out how to skill better. Or effort better. I had someone have a crack at my post-game caption for the post-game post was that we had some decent efforting in the game, which I know it's kind of a made-up word, and someone responded saying, "Oh, we're just making up words now, are we?" Which, yes, I was, and I'm okay with that. We, there's effort. We efforted okay, but we just the skills gap has been quite apparent all year now. And I think Jamie and I were texting back and forth a little bit during the game and in the immediate aftermath of it as well. And I said to him, we both expressed a sentiment to each other that while we don't have the skill base to handle the ball, like handball well, work our way through any adversity within a game, pressure, and consistently, yes, you're going to have turnovers in a game. Like, turnovers are a part of football. You're going to have a turnover number. It's the fact that when you're consistently worse than another team, and then your disposal efficiency is consistently 10% down on the other team, these things are a problem. And we kind of expressed a sentiment that while we have these issues, there's it renders any and all kind of game plans and ideation throughout a game of how to win a game of football kind of null and void. You just can't consistently put the effort is there. And I've been really actually pleased with the effort and the rebound from the kind of capitulation against St Kilda a few weeks ago. I think we've actually applied ourselves quite well, but you can't effort your way through skill deficiencies. You can't effort your way through structural instability, so to speak, with where we are. We just find ourselves out of position. We don't. We're a little bit reactive sometimes when another team starts to do the skills better. We're kind of reactive in our positioning, trying to, and there was a little bit of flat-footedness at times during this game as well, just a little bit. But it was just it's not I'm trying to find a way to express it right so it's understood, but it's not I don't think we had the effort. Again, I think the effort was there in this game. It's just we are structurally off because our skills are off. We pull ourselves out of position when we're trying to go forward, but we don't have the skills to execute a kick, so that you get the turnovers and intercepts and rebounds coming back at you, and you're already out of position because you've poor kick forward or just there's a reactive nature to how we deal with those situations. And this game with an experienced coach, a side with a blend of experience and some a new generation coming through, and just a side in Brisbane that have been up and about as a premiership contender for pretty much the entire AFLW history. There's just a structural identity to them as a decent side, and they just kind of wore us down with understanding that they had. You can look at a game of football sometimes from the start and kind of know where your strength, if your strengths are outdoing the opponent, and you can kind of look at it and go, look, we have the possession dominance. We're a better side. Our handball game is going to cause trouble. We can do this, and this better than them. If we stick to our structures, it should work. It doesn't always. You can have Hawthorn could have been excused for thinking that in the semi-final against us last year, and they, for all intents and purposes, had beaten us to 3/4 time, but they hadn't put us away on the scoreboard. That's why scoreboard pressure is the ultimate factor in football. But Brisbane, after that first opening few minutes when we did have it down our forward end, you could just see that they kind of turned the screw. They slowly just turned the screw as the game went on, stuck to their game plan, stuck to their structures, and just knew that they had the skill, the skill ability above us to get the game on their terms, and they did, and it kind of just wore us down as the game went on, and conditions played a factor, and I think a big factor has to be said. We went into the game, obviously, Abby Darrick down, who is obviously our podcast best and fairest last year, and has been right up there in the votes pretty consistently this year, a bit up and down as to whether she's best on or wherever she fits in that, but she's always there and thereabouts as far as one of our key cogs in the side. She's out. Then Kirsty Lamb, who'd come into the week before for an injured Piper Window, a late out that Piper Window was against the Bulldogs. Kirsty Lamb's out, and so we're missing two key kind of inside dominant. Abby Darrick's ability to get the ball forward with a long range and kick. Kirsty Lamb's just ability to win the ball and be tough in the contest and a bit of leadership. They're both out, and then we have Piper Window, who, shout out to her, and just I just feel for her with this year. Had a great year last year as it built on. Come in with a good preseason. Looking strong to kind of take on her second year in the system, and has a syndesmosis injury, gets back from that, but has a little bit of trouble with that, and then she gets back into this game and gets a girl just collect her late, and I think it's a cheekbone fracture, I think, or she's needed a little bit of work to that cheekbone after the head clash there, or the shoulder to head that she copped. Looked quite distraught, was a little bit worried for her, and I'm kind of glad that, she's getting concussion protocols, and she's had a little bit of work to the cheekbone done, but hopefully she's in good spirits. And you'd have to think if she's got a little bit of a structural issue with the cheekbone, whether we see her again this year, unfortunately. It's just because, unless you're putting in basketball, they put the mask on, but basketball is a little bit different. You're not at risk of too much head clash in basketball. And, there is, but it's a little bit more, whereas football, there's a lot of head over the ball stuff. So I'd be surprised just based on what I'm reading if Piper Window plays again this year, but which is just shattering for her. But also just at this point, you want to make sure she's tip-top and ready to go for next year. And thankfully, as long as she is on top of the ankle issue, a facial fracture is something that isn't going to affect her preseason abilities too much. But yeah, back to the game at hand, though. We lose Piper Window early, who's already, she's going to, you're looking at the side, and when I went into the preview last week, talked about her ability to try to, take some of the, she needs to collect some of those stats that your Abby Darricks and your Kirsty Lambs are collecting play a little bit of both, because Piper's kicks improved and things like that. But so we miss her. That's early in the game. You're down Darrick, Lamb, and Window now at this point, and you're down a rotation on the bench on an extremely hot day. So from that standpoint, we're already kind of playing with an arm tie behind our back for a little while from that point on. And that was without the fact that even with Window in that game, Brisbane were probably still going to have the game played on their terms, and we're going to have to fight pretty hard and have some kind of miracles go our way. Umpiring doesn't help. The free kick count is +2 in our advantage, but I think there's kind of the way the free kicks and where they were at certain points certainly was decidedly in Brisbane's advantage. But I'm assuming Jamie's notes when he talks later will probably mention a little bit about the umpiring, but I think I ultimately said to him as well, and we kind of agreed as well when we were texting post-game, those things are annoying and it's frustrating, but we are still the architects of our own demise at this point. We are just not good enough in those skill areas that I was mentioning earlier, and that's ultimately leading to these kind of results, because we again we put forward a decent effort. We're up by a goal at 4 points at quarter time. We're down by a couple at half time, but for much of the third quarter, it was a real tight battle, and we were within a goal or two. They just got away kind of near the end there, and then they kick another 3 in the last quarter to our 1, and it ends up being the result it is. But up until halfway, 3/4 of the way through the third quarter, I was like, we're still in this. Like, and to be fair, you're still in it right up until, it's 15, 20 points down and there's only a few minutes to go. But we haven't been embarrassed at any match at any point this year, as far as being, apart from, the Kangaroos would be the one outlier, obviously. The last quarter against West Coast, St Kilda, a little bit of West Coast. There's an embarrassing 5 or 6 minute periods that have led to losses. But as far as looking at a scoreboard and seeing the teams you're playing, you go, look, we've been competitive all the way through, which I think is a step up on where we've been over the last few years. I know I'm a little bit more, I'll get to some stats from the game in a little bit, but I just kind of, in reflection on this game and seeing some of the commentary on social media, I kind of feel like it's more important to talk about it this game did kind of probably put our season on life support, so to speak. And, we're 2 games out of the 8 and we have 3 games to go against some pretty tough opposition in HAWTHORN this week, Crows next week, and then GWS the week after is probably the game that we hope to win to maybe finish the season off in good standing. But, we're still a mathematical chance at finals, but it's increasingly unlikely. And I think the Brisbane result was needed to keep some real hope, I think. Now we're kind of like clinging to real, like, fucking Dumb and Dumber, like you're saying there's a chance kind of stuff. That's where we're at this point. It's kind of interesting that the Brisbane game in the men's and women's season this year has been one that's has seen a beloved kind of hard-nosed player and Window and Pal Pepper go down injured, and ultimately we've battled okay, but Brisbane have ultimately gotten ahead, and it's frustrating. But there's just been some talk on social media, like some of the commentary on our posts on Facebook. A few pet fans, and look, I can understand frustrations if you're a fan that came in from last year and was like, we made preliminary final last year, let's push on. There's a lot of people going, it's a backward step this year, it's it's a failure. I don't see it that way. I think we've tried to preach this right from the start, that with the way the women's fixture works, only playing 12 games in a year is a very, very unfair fixture, and how it's weighted depending on what you did last year. And we set ourselves up to have a tougher fixture. And I think Ash Woodland actually today did some press work. I actually want to find what she said, because she had some good things to say about, she said we earned a tougher fixture last year. Sorry, I'm just trying to find her words on the fixture and these kind of things. But she basically said, we earned ourselves a tougher fixture last year. Here we go. We've got a harder fixture this year, and we earned it last year, and absolutely want to play the harder team. So if that means having learnings from games, I think it will just build us up to be better for the future. So we've definitely had a lot of learnings this year, but I was hoping to end the season on a high and win these next 3 games. Look, winning the next 3 games, if we can do that and then be touching finals, I think would actually be a pretty good win for the year. I don't think we're going to win all 3 games, but we're going to be in them. That's for sure. And just back to what people have been saying, like fans' perceptions on where we should be. It's just, you've got to understand what the squad build and what the build has been here. Like I said, I've got a major criticisms for our skills and disposal and how we're structured and everything this year. But we're also playing almost all the way through the season. We've been playing top 8 contenders, or mostly teams that are in the top 8 or around abouts. So we need to be cognizant of that and kind of just sit there and go, look, we could easily have 2 or 3 more wins if a couple of swings go our way. Geelong decision at the end of the Geelong game. We don't fall apart at the end of the St Kilda game. There's two wins right there. The Freo game we were coming, and then we didn't quite get it done. West Coast, we kind of let them run over the top. You can look at the season now. This is all sliding doors, and who cares? We didn't win them, and that's partly on us. That is mostly on us as well. Geelong one, you can complain all you want about the umpiring one, but we should have, just take opportunities sooner. So I look at it, some of the criticisms from fans that just expected a binary rise, a rise up, or a linear rise up is the word I'm looking for. Progression is not linear at all in these, particularly in the AFLW, in particular the way we've been building our list. It's been just to kind of construct it with a lot of youth that can grow together and build together into a top level team. And they're still quite young, and just hopefully is what's coming in the next few years. It is frustrating because us as fans, we want to be watching, good football and be excited, entertained. But I think we have had fairly good moments of entertainment this year. Indy Tahoe having the year she's having. Obviously, Matilda Scholl's doing things, doing Matilda things. Sinead Goody's showing little glimpses of highlight kind of behaviour. Ash Woodland's having a great year, having been being tasked with some new roles that she hasn't played before. Like Sasachi Simon as well, and growing. Tegan Jermack continuing the rise from injury replacement player to being a key cog in our defensive system. There's a lot to love there, but ultimately it is a young side that got given a tough task because they overachieved last year. And I don't say they overachieved last year as a slight on them. I think most would. I think if you asked them in their truth serum, some players, they'd say, "Look, yeah, we snuck over the line in a miraculous comeback in a semi-final that we had up until 3/4 time had no rights in winning, and it just happened. And then we get to a preliminary final and get boat raced by the Kangaroos. Our level after." We deserved to beat Richmond in that home elimination final last year. Had to go away to play Hawthorn, and for 2.5, 3/4, Hawthorn were by far and away better than we were, and we just had a miraculous little comeback to win that one. So, yeah, I don't mean it as a slight on this team that we slightly overachieved last year. We just did go further than we expected to go last year, and we've got the fixture that has given us, and it's given us some challenges this year. And this team has had some injuries that they weren't expecting, like Piper Window being out for most of the year is not what we expected. Obviously, we would have liked to have Julia Teakle being a focal point at forward. Indy Tahoe has been unlocked as a prospect for the future, or not just a prospect. She's a prospect for now, but a genuine swing woman for the future, and predominantly forward, hopefully. So there's been things we've learned from this year. We've certainly also, having had to play a lot of these tough teams so much, we've gotten first-hand experience in what these teams play like and what we need to look like going forward as well. So I don't look at this year as a failure. I don't look at it as a step backwards. I look at it as a plateauing, which I think I'm still trying to think back to the start of the season, what Jamie and I were talking about as what could possibly happen. I think whether it's off air or on air, but I think Jamie and I have had the discussions at times that this could be a little bit of a plateau year and a settling in year. And I don't think, even if ladder position and the fact we finish out of finals is going to look like a step backwards, if you look at the results and how we've played against good opposition, we've never had a run of playing this many good teams in a 12-week period of play ever in our AFLW history. In particular, and actually competing. Like if we go back to the first couple of seasons, if we're playing these good teams and runs for a few weeks, we're not in those matches at really any point. Maybe we fight hard for a little bit, but by and large, we're getting beaten comfortably. We're not having, this is our biggest loss of the year beyond the Kangaroos, and for 2.5 quarters, we were pretty close to the Brisbane Lions in this one. And some of these other top 4 teams, we've beaten Melbourne this year, who are still a top 4 team currently as it stands, and been very, very close to some others in that. And that just wasn't the case in previous years. So I think you actually look at the nuance of how the fixture is, how we've played against some of these teams at times, and how we've been competitive. It is disappointing and it is frustrating. I'm frustrated. I would love to be playing finals again. It is disappointing sitting here thinking, look, I'm going to the game on Friday against Hawthorn and thinking, it's the last time I'm going to see them at home this year, and by highly likely, we're not, if we make finals, I don't think it's going to be a home final. If there's a miraculous run to make finals, I'm disappointed, but I think when I look at the nuance of how the fixtures worked, the teams have played, I can see that this side, I think, still has just plateaued. They haven't taken a step back. They've kind of found a level they were at last year where they did just effort their way forward into some finals by just finding a way to play with their limited resources last year. They've tried to kind of dial in on some of that a little bit this year and try to be a little bit better, and they're still just not experienced enough to be as good as these sides, collect as much of the ball, hold as much of the ball, have the possession to keep winning, to just match it with these sides. They can do it for short periods, but across the course of a 4-quarter game, as I said back near the start, Brisbane know what they're good at, stick to their structure, stick to their processes, and ground us down towards the end of that game. And that's where we want to get to. And there's certainly going to have been a lot of learnings from a game like this, I believe, for these girls, and across the year there will have been as well. I am disappointed. I do have my genuine criticisms, and I think seen some people, Arnell's names come up on social media as to whether, what her future holds. I don't think that's a question that needs to be asked right now. She's contracted through the end of 2026, so that's just next season. And I think she's earned the right to have a crack at it through to the end of next season. Look, if we started next season 0-5 or something like that, then, whether they go, we'll make a move mid-season. I don't know if that's the style in the AFLW at the moment, or what we as a club would do. But I think she's earned the right to go through the end of 2026, see what this year can take into next year's preseason, how they can develop further. If we get to the end of 2026 and there's not much more growth, then that's when I think you'd be looking at a move. But I don't think the extension until the end of 2026 was the wrong, rash in decision making. I think she's developed, worked with these girls quite well, seems to be quite well respected, and there's nothing I see. Like, she's got some things that she's got to. I think there's been some interesting aspects of the side this year that are, do put the questions on the coaching and what the messaging is going out and how the preparation's going. But this is a young side as well, so sometimes how the messaging gets through to inexperienced players is part of it. So she's hopefully, that's why I think give her 2026 as well. See if she can, with this group, she's developing a messaging, developing the game plan. And if the group with another year on them next year if they can't get it together by the end of next year, then at that point I'm starting to think, look, there's got to be a change. But she got this team just through pure effort and some magic through to a preliminary final last year. I think that's got some tickets to it. So this year's been a plateau year of sorts. Next year's kind of the year, the make or break one for Arnell for me. I'm not too worried about how the rest of this year goes. And look, if she can be competitive against Hawthorn, snatch a win, that would be a big plus. And then if she can get our first showdown win next in a week and a half as well, that would be a big plus for her as well. So, yeah, not too. There is. I have questions about. I should try to make sure I get this point across clear. I do have questions about Arnell as a coach because this is the year we're in at the moment. You're always going to have questions, but it's not questions that I'm like I want her gone. It's just she, just like a lot of this group, needs to take that next step. And I think she has earned the right to have next year to do that. And there's aspects of how we've gone about it this year that have impressed me about Arnell. There's plenty of aspects about how we've gone about it this year that make me question her as well. And I think that's okay to just be like, we're a side that's in a development phase still. And I think a lot of people are not realizing just how raw we came into the competition with the amount of players that we had playing immediately every game, almost every minute. The likes of Amelie Borg, who are 17, 18, and, we look at Borg like a fucking veteran now, and she's 21 or what? I think she's 21. A lot of these players that we're looking at your Gemma Houghtons and Ash Woodlands and co are genuine, mid to late 20s experienced players, but a lot of the players that we've come into the league with, Isachi Symes are 2021, Jermac, Goody, Scholes, they're all extremely, extremely young. If you had a side with this kind of star power but rawness in games, and it's games played as well. I think that's what people don't realise is these girls just don't get enough development time outside of, AFL men's. If they're not playing at the league level, they're down in reserves or state league, whatever it may be, and the girls just don't get that. They also just don't get as many games every year. Men's players, if you come in as a rookie, Murphy Reed's already played more games this year than Shanae Goody's played in 2 years. Like Piper Window, with the amount of injuries she's had, she's at 14, 15 games in her career now, maybe 16, 17 with the finals last year. I'm trying to think now, but Murphy Reed's played more than that, and he's just played 1 year in his career. So we've got to look at those kind of things and just understand the development isn't linear, but there's a lot of these girls are very, very young, and we've got to give them a little bit of time. And with that, Arnell gets a little bit more time for me as well. So sorry to go off on a tangent there, by the way. It was a little bit of a tangent, but that's just kind of some of the, now that we're in this phase of the season that we're kind of like, finals are likely out of the window. There's starting to be that kind of end of year reckoning from fans a little bit as well. I just kind of wanted to kind of extrapolate on some of that out of this result, because a lot of how I'm feeling about how we're playing comes from this result. There was things that I was happy with, there was things that I was unhappy with, and it's just been an interesting year on that front. But I think we do need to kind of just temper. I think that's why at the start of the year we said we need to just temper expectations a little bit, because we're going to be in for a tough fixture. And I know Jamie and I at the start of the year said we need to, defend home field and then see what we can do away from that. We just haven't done that, and that's ultimately ended up in the year that it's been. So, I'll take a quick break here and then just have a look at a few more of the stats from the game before we get to votes and Jamie's thoughts as well. Alrighty, so some of the stats in this one, I feel like I think I said last week, like Sex Pistols flogging a dead horse with this kind of the stats read out every week, because it is just the same stuff. Once again, I did touch on it briefly before. The disposal number was 278 to 200. And then we look at disposal efficiency, which kind of really hammers home kind of where we're at, because the disposal efficiency for Brisbane with their 278 was 65.5%. We only had 200 disposals, so 78 less, and could still only get to 54%, which is about a season average. That's, I'm not expecting much more or less than that if we hit our average, but Brisbane's season average of 61.5, so they've actually gone to 4% better with their obvious disposal dominance as well. So they get 78 more disposals. So we're talking getting closer to 25. Is 20% more of the ball and getting closer to 25% more of the ball. That's quick math, and I'm probably completely wrong. Sorry, but they're getting a fair bit more of the ball, and also being far more efficient with it. So when you look at that, the disposal number, the raw disposal number discrepancy, and then the discrepancy in disposal efficiency, you can actually, in your head, kind of extrapolate that out even more, because when they're having that much more of the ball and they're using it at 10%, 11% better, that's a significant factor in why we lost the game. Because then we look at, there's other areas of the game. Efficiency inside 50, by the way, was 54.8 to 42.1. So that was just a factor there as well. There was a lot of moments in that game where we just kicked it. And, again, those kicks inside 50, they're either, it's part of the skills part of it that I hope develops over the next, 18, 24 months, that we just develop when to know how to, the penetrative kick versus the floating kick, and how to kick, kicks with good touch on them to, it's kind of, it's something you see in AFL all the time, and the good kicks in the AFL, whether they be your Zach Butters or your Nick Dacos's or whoever, that can, when they've got time and space, and they can just Butters, when he does those little chip kick, we talk about Butters' leg being kind of like a golf shot thing. I mean, I apologise for bringing men's into it, but I'm just trying to think of, an example of that, you as the listener, and thank you for listening as always, can kind of immediately grab onto in your mind and understand what I'm saying about, just touch on kicks. We just don't have enough of that, whether it be under pressure or, there's plenty of times where we're under pressure, and good players under pressure, and both AFL men's and women's can still get out effective kicks. Unfortunately, sometimes we're not under that much pressure, and we still just don't get the touch on the kicks right. And there is AFL women's players out there. There's plenty of them that have a bit more of a affinity to be able to do that, ability to be able to do that. So we need to be able to improve on that, and that was like some of that inside 50 stuff. kicks inside 50. We got intercepted a lot this last week, and good teams that are structured up soundly defensively, it can just do that, and we unfortunately played right into their hands in that aspect of the game. But we are getting closer and closer, and like inside 50 counts are not that far out. Like Brisbane only had 4 more inside 50s in this game, 42-38. So that's a frustrating aspect of it too, is that we're just not getting enough of the ball. The possession numbers, it is just the frustrating aspect of it. It's like you think to, like in soccer, when you have a possession differential of 40, like Brisbane had 47% of the ball, we had 35%. So then there's obviously a period where it's in play, but when you're having a possession differential of that magnitude, it's generally going to lead to a loss in any sport. Unless you're playing a game that really is like it's hard to score either way, whether soccer, sometimes you can hold on to a possession differential like that, but a possession differential like that in AFL is usually going to lead to some kind of scoreboard differential, whether it'll be as much as you want it to be as the team with the advantageous side of the possession number. It depends on your ultimate efficiency when it comes to inside 50, but when you're having a possession number like that, you're going to get the opportunities, and then it's just about taking advantage of them, and Brisbane ultimately did. But yeah, the inside 50 number isn't grossly outnumbered. So we are getting more of the ball going forward. It's just that it's actually the disposal efficiency. It's the skills to, not be under pressure, like working our way out of pressure and not just always dump kicking it from, half forward or just forward of center and all that stuff, because we just find ourselves in pressure. And partly because we don't know how to handball, like we don't handball enough. Like obviously I mentioned before, the handball number, that we were, 3/4 of our possessions were kicks. We just don't handball enough. And I've talked a lot about in AFL men's that we sometimes handball too much. Like we had that game we had a good game earlier this year that were one. I think the handball to kick ratio was 1-to-1 for us at one point in the year. But there's a balance to be found with the handball, and you do need to be able to handball, handball triangle your way out. You see teams in the AFL women's do it to us, where they have penetrative handballs. They also gather on the handball. Sometimes we do a decent handball, but we don't have, we just fumble the reception. And it's insanely frustrating that we just mess up. We either mess up the handball when a player's in good position, or we get a decent handball out to a player in good possession who's already turning to try. It's just like we're at such a basic level of skills still that we're trying to figure these things out in the run, whereas other teams already know how to gather a handball, receive, and keep moving into space, and we just don't have that. So that's kind of where the frustrating aspects of how we enter 50 and why those numbers are the way they are, because the don't know where that accent came from for a second. The disposal, we just don't get enough of the ball, and part of that is just because we're not proficient with the handball, so we're just kicking it to contest and stuff like that, and that's where those numbers are coming from. But then you see the inside 50 numbers aren't that bad, and then we get a domination at hitouts 24-14, clearances total 23-15 our way, center clearances we shade 9-7, and stoppage we win 14-8. So we win every clearance number, we win the hitouts, we win center clearances, we win stoppage. So we're getting an advantage there, but it's just the possession, like our ability to actually utilize that possession just isn't there, and that's what's so frustrating. We also had a game where we just didn't mark the ball as well as we have in the past, 53 marks to 34, obviously Brisbane's way. That's a large discrepancy. We've been better at that, and over the last, since probably the middle of last year, it's still a lot better number than we were getting at points last year. I remember some marking numbers in the teens at a certain point last year maybe, and certainly in previous years we were far, far worse on that front as well. But that's part of the kicking efficiency, and some of those efficiency numbers is we just weren't putting good kicks in, and there was a fair few of those marks that Brisbane took were intercepts of our kicks. So we did win the contested marking number 9-3, so that's good. Like we're getting better in some aspects of the game. The fact that we win the contested marks by 6 but lose overall marks by 19 is partly because Brisbane didn't need to contest and mark as much because they actually took some pretty easy marks off of our kicks. So, yeah, frustrating. They also take 12 marks inside 50 to our 7, which is just their ability to get a good disposal and good kicks inside 50 and kind of their ability to pull us outside of our structure a little bit as well. So, yeah, they were winning some good areas there, but it's just frustrating seeing that we do win. We do win all those clearance numbers, the midfield numbers. We win there. We shade contested possession 114 to 112 as well. A pretty good number there. It's just the uncontested possessions. The fact that they had almost 100 more of those, and the discrepancy on the year is only 50. So they just win some areas like that far better. Turnovers was only +5 in our -5 in their favour, which is better than the -10 on the year. So we didn't turn the ball over as much. We just didn't dispose of it well enough, and whether it be intercept marks or there were some brutal turnovers as well. Sinead Goody had a handball inboard towards the centre that looked like she actually, I think, out of the corner of her eye, thought the Brisbane player was a Port player because how telegraphed the handball was, and it sounded somewhat ironic. As I've just been talking about handball inefficiency, that she just put this handball on a platter for a Brisbane player that was able to break, and that was just a turnover goal right away. And don't want to pinpoint Sinead for anything because I actually think she had a good game and is continuing she's a burgeoning star, and will be in the next 2 to 3 years. But we just did stuff like that, and that's in a game that like goals for us were hard to come by, and at times for Brisbane they're having to work pretty hard. It was those are real just absolute killers for your day. That you're already playing, as I said, with an arm tied behind your back with some of the players we had missing, and then losing a rotation and a key player that you really want. And you're still kind of trying to hold on. It's a tight match, and then you just give one up like that. It's brutal. But she had some good passages of play, some good bursts that led to. I think she had a good burst of running play that led to the Lauren Young's goal as well. So, but yeah, turnovers, not a terrible discrepancy, but still ultimately our disposal efficiency and just our inability to have enough of the ball ultimately allowed Brisbane to just grind us down. That's what the good teams do when they come up against good teams. Come up against lucky up and coming teams like ours. And they just know that if they stick to their structure, stick to what they do well, that they'll ultimately grind out the result, and that's what happened. They were able to utilize. They utilized 59 of their 60 interchanges. We utilized 52. There's 3 down in our seasonal average, so it's a slight number, but it is still rotations. Every rotation matters in a game of football, and particularly when you're down one and down like we're just down midfielders. Bullish midfielders we were just down in, but so for us to still win those midfield numbers, a few of those numbers is actually a good plus point to the result, despite what the result was. I believe it's still frustrating, but I think with some of those areas that we're winning, that's a plus point going forward in the future. You've just got to build out the skills and the structure around that. You've got your unicorn ruck. You've got some good midfield talent and developing midfield talent. You've got Ash Woodland, who's changed her game and is providing some really good run and a bit of a different focal point in the midfield as well. You've got a lot of good areas. You've just got to flesh that stuff out around. It's that transition from defense to forward. It's that just when you win clearance and getting inside 50, where the structure of the forwards are. Because there's some of the kicks that came inside 50 that just... It felt like the forwards didn't know that they should be there, but that's where the kick was coming. Like it was obvious that, so it's like there's no real, and that's part of the skills thing too. Is like you've just got players that throw it on the boot and don't exactly know. They're still learning their kind of proficiency in some of those areas. So, look, a lot of areas to work on in the off season. There's a lot to be done, but I am frustrated, disappointed by the year, but I think there needs to be a little bit of, when you look at some of these areas in this game and look back across the year, I think we've got next year's the big year. It absolutely is. We'll talk about it more, obviously, in the off season when we do a full spectrum review of the season. But I think just some of my reflections in this game and what we've seen and some of the commentary that I've seen on social media has just led me to being a little bit more reflective in this episode as I look back on this individual game as it was. So, yeah, hopefully it hasn't been too tangenty or run off. But I'm also absolutely knackered from doing 12 days straight of work. So I am just kind of freewheeling a little bit on my thoughts on it, and also talking to myself. So yeah, try not to lose my mind on in that front either. But yeah, hopefully that's been some kind of food for thought stuff for people listening about how our season's going. And some areas to be excited about, despite the results, and some areas that we've just got to look at and go, look, this needs to be worked on. And it's stuff to really key in on in the off season and work towards for next year. And yeah, there's areas to work on, but it's not throw the baby out with the bathwater stuff at all at this point. It's just accept there's been we were hoping to get a few more results, just hasn't gone our way. But we haven't been embarrassed too much this year either. So. It's just one of those years. Sometimes it just doesn't go for you. That's sport. That's life. But particularly in sports, we're all buying into a system as a fan of, whether it's you're a fan of this or a fan of any sport. We're all buying into a system that asks 95% of fan bases to understand that you're not going to win the ultimate every year. That's why fans of all types around the world are all jaded and heartbroken, because we're all buying into a system that allows one champion out of 12, 18, 30 teams, whatever league you might be in. We're just a part of it. So there's always going to be a team like us in a year that's like they seem like they're good, but they're not quite good enough, and they're just going to fall. I think Western Bulldogs this year just couldn't quite get over the line in the AFL men's against the top sides, and ultimately just didn't make finals. Even though sometimes not that we've been that good this year, but sometimes during the men's year, the Western Bulldogs look like the best team on the planet, but they couldn't. They smashed bad teams, as we did the Gold Coast. Occasionally, got close or maybe got a win against one top 8 team, but ultimately just fell short too many times against the top 8, and ultimately just finished outside finals. And I feel like that's a very similar kind of storyline for us this year. And not that we've, been, the metrics haven't shown us to be that good of a side, but I think we've been good enough this year, plucky, but just ultimately not getting it done quite enough against those top sides, and then we are where we are. The table doesn't lie, unfortunately, and that's the tale of the tape for this year so far. I'll take a quick break again here, and then we'll get into votes and Jamie's thoughts.
Now it's time for the CREEDCAST Player of the Year voting.
Yes, Player of the Year votes are coming up here, and this is about the time that we'll hear from Jamie. I think there's about 12 minutes here that Jamie's put in for us, so it's clear that, and as I've said every week since Jamie's been on paternity leave, really, really just pleased for him getting the time with his family and taking the time with his family and enjoying this wonderful time of life as they've welcomed a new one into the family. So everything's going well there, and I'm sure he might have whether he's got an update in here. Again, I haven't listened to it. I listen to the first few seconds to make sure it's come through fine, and then I just plug it into my Sting deck here so that we can all listen to Jamie's thoughts together. So if we cross over on a couple of things here, that's why, and I apologise, but ultimately we do have a similar train of thought to a lot of things, but looking forward to what Jamie's got here, and he's going to have his votes in this as well. So we'll hear Jamie's thoughts on the result and his votes here in the next 10 to 12 minutes, and I'm going to sit back here and sip on a beer. I do appreciate that Jamie sends through one long enough that I can just chill out with a beer for a bit, because when I'm talking to myself, I'm sitting here with a beer that I opened at the start, and I'm taking like 2 sips of it when I've taken a couple of pauses. I don't get much drinking time on the podcast when Jamie's not here. So he's giving me that here in his little bit of content here for the next 12 or so minutes. So listen in. We'll hear from Jamie now.
G'day, Creed fam. Thanks for tuning in as always. Jamie here again to supply my votes, but just quickly on the girls. I'm sure Dave has covered it all extensively well. He's been doing a fantastic job while I've been away, so big ups to Dave. Just on the performance, fucking what a disappointing kind of first nail, second nail, third. It's another nail in the coffin of season 2025, unfortunately. A very frustrating one for mine. Quickly before I get to my votes, I'm sure Dave has covered it all by this stage of the pod, but just wanted to relay a tweet that I put out at the culmination of the game on the weekend for those who aren't on Twitter and don't see it, but it basically sums up my thoughts of our girls at the moment and that game in particular. But to quote my tweet from 3 days ago, one of the all-time bias and subjective opinions, this is mine of course, and happy to be called out, but genuinely believe Lions got an almighty right in this one. And look, I think I'm preaching to the choir here. In losses, it can be seen as a bit of poor losership, for want of a better term, but I genuinely believe that the umpires had a bit of a mare and the noise of affirmation. Hey, look, we might have got it going our way in the Western Bulldogs, but I don't really fucking care about that. When opposition sides are getting some pretty ho-hum free kicks within striking distance, it makes our job a lot fucking harder. But the second part of that tweet was, I also genuinely believe our poor skill execution renders any game plan we've trained null and void. We're basically pushing teams on grit alone and Matilda Schultz. So that's basically where I'm at. While we can bitch and moan about how poor the umpiring was, which again, I genuinely believe it was, and I think it was very one-sided, I don't think we're doing ourselves any favour, and in my opinion, our skills are of utmost importance to be improved. Pretty much for me, as soon as the season ends, our girls need to start doing skills workshops or whatnot and handball drills constantly. I'm sure they're putting in a lot of effort. You know, heading into last season, 2024, it was well noted that we worked very heavily on our fitness, and that obviously gave us a leg up, as well as the draw that we had for last season. We had us running out games very well, in stark contrast to most of this season. But as we know from our men's season, you know, back in the men's team, I should say, back in the Burgess years, you know, you can only get an edge on other clubs fitness-wise before everyone catches up, and then you need to actually go, you rely on your skill or your game plan and or all of the above. And unfortunately, our skills, in my opinion, just aren't up to it. Again, sorry if I'm echoing things that Dave has already covered, but yeah, watching the game, it's just so obvious where we're letting ourselves down. When you're under pressure, no matter what it is, whether it be sport or otherwise, when you're under pressure, habitual behaviours come to the fore. And unfortunately, while handballing isn't much of our game plan, when we do need to deploy that kind of modality of skill, it seems like we've never handballed a football in our lives. And I say I mean, and the girls on the field. And look, all of the caveats, young team, hard draw. 2025 has been a fucking write-off for the men's and the women's season through injury and adversity. But at the end of the day, if our skills were a bit better to marry up with the grit and determination, which I think we have in spades, I think it would bridge a lot of these gaps: poor umpiring, good umpiring, and anywhere in between. But yeah, that's just my thoughts. We're basically now in the position where we were for the end of the men's season, where we're kind of looking for small bits and pieces that are going to provide a shining light heading into the off-season and then into season 2026. So that's all for me and my thoughts. Again, Dave's probably covered all of this at length. He's been doing a fantastic job, as I said. But just to get into my votes, honourable mentions for Ella Heads and Molly Brooksby. Look, okay games from them. Ella Heads, these two girls always try their heart out. Brooksby's disposal efficiency has been a bit down as of late, but I also noticed that they're kind of shifting her up the ground a little bit more, probably to try and take advantage of her longer kick and maybe her a generally effective kick, I would have thought, albeit, like I just said, her disposal efficiency is a bit down as of late. Ella Head's disposal efficiency in this game was pretty poor, but she's always getting stuck in and has a well-balanced statistical sheet apart from that. So land in the honourable mentions. My first two votes come from the defensive third, at a hiding to nothing for most of the game. Or, I haven't even spoken about the heat and the humidity and whatnot, let alone Brisbane's efficient ball movement and putting our defenders under pressure. But my one vote goes to Tegan Jermack. 12 disposals, 7 contested, 9 of which were intercepts. She went at 66.7%, which is in the higher brackets for our players on the day, particularly ones who got over 10 disposals. 225 metres gained, 5 rebound 50s and 4 1%ers. Out of any players this season, I think, Tegan Jermack's one who can more or less hold her head up high in regards to taking another step up. Because, again, as one of Dave's favourites, being an injury replacement player at the start of last season and earning a contract extension, it's a good story for us. And that leads me to my number 2 votes, which is Sachi Syme. Before I say her stats, I will just note that she only played 73% time on ground, and the other players that I've got in my votes all played at least 83% plus, I believe, or 84% time on ground. So Sachi's stats were 13 disposals, 11 of which were contested, 12 of which were intercepts. She went at 69.2%, really trying to drive some play off the half-back line. 328 metres gained and 5 rebound 50s would go in conjunction with that sentiment. She's trying her heart out, and like I said, her disposal efficiency was 69.2, Jermack 66.7. They're doing a lot better than some of our other players around the field, and particularly my next few votes, funnily enough, we're really relying on the players like Jermack on any given week and Syme on any given week to be a wall to begin with, and then try to drive some play off the half back line. So credit to them. 1 and 2. 3 votes goes to Shanae Goody. Just really backed up her Western Bulldogs game a little bit more. I believe I had her in my honourable mentions for that game though. So her keep on keeping on. She got 19 disposals, 12 contested, 6 intercepts. She went at 57.9%. So like I said, as we go through this list, the disposal efficiency kind of drops off a little bit, although these players have offset it in other ways. She got 411 metres gained, 3 rebound 50s, 3 clearances, 3 marks, 3 scoring involvements, 6 tackles and 3 tackles inside 50. So a bit more of a well-rounded Shanae Goody game as we came to expect heading into this season. Tickling that 20 disposal mark without getting there. So, the last few rounds are big for her in just expanding her game and trying to really build on what she's already laid down in her first season and 2/3, I guess you could say. 4 votes for me goes to Matilda Schultz. I believe she got the most coaches' votes from this game, but just had her pegged in the 4 spot for mine. She also got the 22 under 22 player of the week, which Dave may or may not have already mentioned. She had the 21 hitouts, 20 disposals, 11 of which were contested, 55% disposal efficiency, 476 metres gained, 6 inside 50s, 7 marks, 4 contested, and that's a great, above all else, Dave and I'm sure licking our lips every time we see those stats pop up from Matilda Schultz when she could hardly mark a couple last year. It's what we were yearning for. She's a real get-out target coming out of defensive 50, which is a handy ace to have up your sleeve. It'd just be helpful if we had the rest of our transition going, or our disposal and skills to go along with that starting point. She's kind of a level above most players on the field, either for us or our opposition sometimes. So 7 scoring involvements, 1 of those being a goal assist, and 3 tackles for Matilda. It's probably her best and fairest to lose, perhaps, at this stage to go back to back. But my 5 votes goes to Ash Woodland, who may be giving her a good crack at it. Again, playing in a new position this season, wholly and solely as a mid, whereas last year it was forward mid. The great thing for me, looked strong in the contest, had an appetite for it, but also managed to rack up some disposals. 25 disposals, which we're not really used to this year. 16 of those which were contested, so just a real beast effort. She was really throwing her strength around, which I appreciated. 6 of her possessions were intercepts as well. 52% disposal efficiency, so I'd really like an improvement on that, because I feel like heading into this season, I was of the belief that She was quite a good ball user, brought a lot of people into the game, but it might be a case of the Ollie Wines, to draw a comparison to the men's team, where if you're doing a lot of grunt work in and under, sometimes your disposal efficiency can reduce, and particularly when we're kicking it so often, and other teams are lifting their disposal efficiency by being a bit more proficient in some easy give-and-go handballs, 1-2 handballs and things like that. Parts of the game that we just don't deploy on game day. 592 metres gain, 11 inside 50s, which I think at the conclusion of our game was a season high for inside 50s, so credit to Ash for that. 3 rebound 50s, 7 clearances, 5 of those were from the centre, 4 score involvements, 5 tackles, and she also had the 3 tackles inside 50. So yeah, just a beast. I think Ash is a weapon. I've said it multiple times on this pod, and again, franked by the fact that this is her first season as a full-time mid, and I think she's just going from strength to strength every week. I just, with those 3, 4, and 5 vote getters, just want to rise in that disposal efficiency, and I think this off season, again, we really need to crack down on our skills, our disposal efficiency, because if we don't do that, we can't keep relying on grit and determination to get us across the line. The better teams are going to keep getting better, and the teams around us are going to overtake us, and we can't afford that, young team or otherwise. We have a real opportunity with this group to do something special over the next 5 to 10 years, but we need to put in the groundwork now. And look, we're talking about a fucking competition where it's a race for second. So are we really losing out? As Port supporters, we'd like to win more often. We want that dopamine. We want a bit of the panacea from the men's season being so disappointing, and we had hopes in our women kind of carrying that mantle. But look, yeah, 2025 from a football perspective at Port Adelaide has just been a real write-off, and I'm sure we can't all wait for 2026 to come around. But look, I could prattle on. I'm itching to get back on. I'll be back on the pod properly soon. Miss my back and forth with Dave and our tangents that we go on. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. Appreciate everyone sticking around. Yeah, again, the football season's been pretty crap, so really appreciate everyone's support. Love everyone who's jumped on board. Love everyone who's contributed. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to getting back on it and making more content for you guys with Dave sometime soon. So cheers, guys. Cheers for listening to my my magnum opus. No, not really. I'll hand you back to Dave, but thanks, guys. Go the power.
Go the power indeed. Thank you to Jamie again for getting those through. It's he's putting a fair bit of time into getting some his thoughts and votes through, and certainly like if you listen to the Patreon show in particular last week, he had a very, very long voice note through and his thoughts on some of the trade window stuff with Butters and Mitch Cleary and everything. So get on the Patreon if you want to listen to that, because Jamie put forth a fair bit of gear last week via voice note, which is really, really, really handy. Helps me fill out the time as well, and not just talk to myself the entire time. And I got to sit back and sip away on my beer, though I probably didn't take advantage of that enough because I was just sitting back listening. But anyway, thank you, Jamie, once again. Yes, it's. I'm glad that everyone that's in his votes, and these votes are actually very, very similar to mine. There's only one point of difference, but I certainly echo his sentiments regarding Brooksby and Ella Heads, 2 players that constantly are grabbing my eye every week, and I kind of like want to put them into my votes, but don't quite get them there quite often. Ella Heads has popped up in there a few times. I think Brooksby's popped maybe not quite as much this year for Brooksby, but I do echo Jamie's sentiments on the fact that we're utilising, last year she's purely more a halfback, bring the ball out of back line, be the first point of contact, like bring the ball out, get a kick out to someone on the wing or they're in the centre or somewhere. Like a relatively high percentage kick, hopefully. High percentage disposal helps her disposal efficiency. This year, they have been playing her up on the ground. She started, like the Bulldogs game, I noted as I was there, I was like, because she's starting on the wing on that near side for us fans watching. I was like, Brooksby's like lining up on the wing to start the game. So she is being utilised up the ground. So rather than being the outlet kick from half back through to hopefully a marking target midway through the field, she's probably more or less like she's taken a few more having to take a few more of those kicks that we're lamenting that aren't finding targets. Partly a little bit, it's a disposal, it's a skills thing, but it's not at all, at just her. And it's partly a structure up the field. I think it's still a little bit off at times. We're just trying to kick to space or kick to a fight, kick to a contest, and hope someone provides some magic. So, yeah, still love her game, and she's one of those ones I've been talking about. That she's 19, 20 years old or whatever it is, and we've got a lot of years ahead of her to develop and get far, far better than she already is as playing at a reasonably high level. So, yes, definitely echo those sentiments. I'll run through mine quick because Jamie's gone through the stats, and we have the same players in there. So I had Simon my one spot. Very good pick out by Jamie, though, her time on ground numbers, because I've often talked about that when we're talking about the men's game. So I didn't pick up on the time on ground number at all this week when I was looking at the stats, but that is a very good pick up by him. But I had her in my one spot. I had Jermac in my two spot. As Jamie said, I love her, and I love injury replacement players, the story behind her coming in, but her poise and her I don't give no fuck about who's in front of me. I'm just going. I just love the way she goes about her footy. And once again, she grabs my eye. She plays footy. There's a purity to how she plays footy. There's a calmness and poise to how she plays her footy. She doesn't panic. Sometimes bites off a little bit more than she can chew, but rarely. I think she got caught holding the ball in a game recently that gave up a goal, and it was a bit frustrating. But I've seen her bust through some coverage and stuff like that much time. So bust through coverage. I've been watching too much football, American football today. She busts through, tackles and stuff like that enough that you go, well, she's done it and it's part of her game and she's good at it. She's just got to learn, when you're near the goal square and you cut back into goal side, maybe that's not the right time to do a stiff arm at that point. But, those things will come with time. And I think the commentators were very, very high on Jermac during the game. They actually mentioned she's kind of become, as particularly Borg being down for a few weeks earlier in the season, Jermac had to become almost our, key pillar, key defender, and Borg being back there does help the structure. But I think Jermac's taken on a greater responsibility this year as far as her leadership and just her role back there. So yeah, really, really happy with her game and glad to get her into the votes. My 3-4-5 is exactly the same as Jamie. I think one of Goody's best games of the year. She had some great busting through the lines kind of plays. Didn't get caught holding the ball as much as she did against the Bulldogs, which was probably the knock on her not getting votes last week. Just a few moments where she brought off, but she's learning the game. She's trying things because she's got that innate skill and understanding of footy, and has already got a goodie with the footy. She's got a great understanding. She's a great kick. She's one of those players I was talking about earlier that we need with the touch of the ball, and she's got a good touch generally. I think she's just one of those ones that's going to develop that over time, but she's already got a very, very good kick, I think. So yeah, a great game from her. Shoals in the 4th spot. Just Matilda just keeps doing what she's doing. She'd probably be close to best on ground if it wasn't for obviously Woodland. Getting 25 disposals, which is 1/8 of our fucking disposals for the entire team for the day. So when we had 200 exactly, and she's gone and had 25 of them, it's actually that's 1/8 of our total for the day. So it's particularly impressive with her being really not playing midfield. I think she said in her press conference today how she was in her early career she was a halfback, and then she's been a key forward. She won the leading goal kicker award in the AFLW in the year that the last time that the Crows won the premiership, which was the year before we even came into the comp. So she's been a key forward, and she's done that a bit for us as well. But the fact she's taken this role on, and she's just said today she wants to do whatever's going to help the team, selfless stuff, but she's doing it at a high level. Despite, I think Jamie mentioned the disposal efficiency. I think it's partly we're just as a team, we don't set ourselves up enough for each other's disposal success, and that's a problem. That's just everyone. But the fact that she had 25 disposals and went at 52% in a game that we basically went at 54% for it as a team, and she was doing a lot of grunt work, contested work, obviously with the leading contested possession player. It was an easy pick for number one or best on ground for the 5 votes. I think Jamie mentioned the 11 inside 50s, which is best in the league all year. I don't know if anyone beat that for the rest of the weekend, but she hit some numbers that were pretty good for the league, and certainly a big number as far as disposals for a midfielder for us. Outside of Shoals, we're struggling to get those players get even 20, so to get 25 and have have that kind of impact on the game and really lead the way. Ultimately, we didn't get the result, but these are good signs going forward for next year as we get more development into the likes of Window and Goody and Dowrick, and then you've got Woodland as like a to be run through there as well. There's some we haven't had a great year at the midfield level, but we're developing some good young players, and then you've got Woodland, kind of taking on a new role. There's going to be some options for us next year if the rest of the development kind of continues at the pace that we hope for. So really, really happy with that. Happy with the votes. Very, very similar. Jamie and I are very, very close to a Yahtzee there, which I don't think we've had in the women's game yet. So very, very close, but didn't ultimately get there, which, maybe just was purely down to Jamie keying in those time and ground numbers that I didn't actually just think to look at this week. So well done to Jamie there. But very, very close to a Yahtzee, but still just very, very happy with those votes. And good stuff from those girls this weekend. Again, in trying conditions, against a very, very good team. There were some good performances out there. It wasn't hard. There's some games where you're really, really terrible and just like, how the fuck do I do votes? There were some good performances out there despite the result, and they deserve to be rewarded and recognised for being the good performances they were. Quick break here before we wrap up the pod, just go with a quick look ahead to what we've got going on this Friday night. Alrighty, so likely our last home game of the season this weekend. Obviously, we play a showdown next week in Adelaide, but that will be at Norwood, being Adelaide's home showdown this year. So we have a home game this Friday evening, 17th of October, 6:45 p.m. Alberton Standard Time against the Hawks. So get around it. Obviously, a tough matchup against a Hawthorn side that is flying quite capably well at the moment. Just opening up the ladder here real quick, but they're up in, I think they're pretty sure they're up in the top four at this point still. Excuse me. I should have had this up before, but they're in second. So having a great year. Obviously, I'll go through a preview more in depth when it comes to Thursday evening this week when we do our squad show and a little bit of Patreon gear. So, and won't go too much in depth on it at the moment, but they are in second with 8 wins on the season and only 1 loss. So, fairly tough side to come up against. Obviously, our first game against them since that semi-final last year, in which we ran over the top of them to get that 1-point win and really just shock the AFL world with that incredible comeback in the final. So a little bit of history there. And all of our games, I think we've played 3 times against them in the AFLW, and they've all been, obviously our win against them in the semi-final was 1 point. And I think the 2 previous games, they won both of those, but they were all within 8 to 12 points, I think. And we haven't had a hard loss against them yet. So it shapes up as a good competitive match again. Obviously, with teams like Hawthorn, Brisbane, St Kilda, West Coast all sitting in the top 8, teams that have had good matches against and just fallen short. There's no reason that we can't compete against this side and put a good foot forward. We are looking at Abby Dowrick as a test for this week, and I think we're hoping that she will be available. Obviously, Piper Window is in concussion protocol, so she'd be out either way, but then she is TBC on the injury report, the cheekbone injury and a little bit of work needed done there. So, Piper Window, as I said earlier in the show, I'd be surprised possibly if she's dealing with some structural issues with the cheek, if she's back this year, to be honest. Kirsty Lamb is 1 to 3 weeks with that calf tightness development, soreness that developed kind of post the Western Bulldogs game, which is disappointing because that's, that borderline looking at her year being in question as well. So we really do need Abs back this week to kind of bolster that midfield group and a little bit of leadership. And certainly, as mentioned by Ash Woodland in her press conference today, just Abby's like that boot, how much penetration she can get from her kicks and clearance can be quite important when we can utilise that well. So, hopefully Abby's back this week. It's our home. Obviously, it is Pride Round over the last couple of weeks. Last week and then this week as well. Really important. Get down there, get around it. It is a very, very important time to recognise that Pride Round is a very, very just important thing to recognise, and go back to the squad show last week as Jamie and I both put our thoughts into that. Jamie with his voice note through about it, and how happy we are to acknowledge it and support it, and support all the people in the community and just be, allies to that, and enjoy, and just Pride Round is a really fun time in the AFLW as well. We get some fucking, just even aesthetically, for me as a sports fan, I love cool Guernseys, and we get some cool Guernseys. Anyone watching YouTube right now see that I've got last year's Pride Guernsey, the home one that we never actually got to wear last year, hanging behind me, and it's just a striking Guernsey. So even just at a purely selfish point of someone that purely enjoys cool Guernseys, you get that out of it. But obviously the deeper meaning behind it is very, very important to recognise, and it is our turn this week as the home team this week to be able to host the Pride Round game, which we do very, very well. Obviously, last year was a lot of fun with our home Pride game being last year against Collingwood, and was Collingwood or St? No, that was St Kilda. Pretty sure it was St Kilda. Maybe it was Collingwood. Now I'm confused. Either way, it was. I don't remember. The opponent doesn't matter because it was a game that Matilda Scholes took Mark of the Year in and Mark of the Century, or whatever you want to call it. It was a great time out there, and the Guernseys look great, and it's just a great time to celebrate and get around. What is a very, very important thing and time to recognise, and in this day and age, in particular at the moment, as certain ideologies around the world try to threaten the way of life of people out there who are simply trying to exist as their authentic selves. It's very, very important to recognise and support these initiatives and rounds in the AFLW to kind of just show that there is a safe space, an empathetic space out there for all people for in all walks of life. So looking forward to getting down there, seeing the Guernseys in person, and hopefully supporting the girls onto a win would be wonderful. It's going to be a tough one this week. I'm certainly not again, kind of like last week against Brisbane. I've got to sit there and go, I don't think we win this game, but I'm not going in. I do go in with some hope that we can be competitive, and if you're competitive, then you never know what can happen. So looking forward to it. Nothing more to say at this point. That probably about wraps up the episode. I am knackered. I need some sleep. As I've mentioned at some point, I've had a run of through people at work and whatnot being unavailable or whatnot. I've done 12 days straight, and so I'm knackered. Looking forward to some sleep and a little bit of time off for a couple of days here, and then back to it. But stick around. Obviously, squad show on Thursday evening, which will release on Friday morning. Or it might even release a bit sooner than that, since we do have the game is on Friday as well. So it'll probably release Friday morning still, because I may not get to it before that. But squad show, Patreon, but also on the main feeds as well, as a bit more of an in-depth preview, and we'll see what the squad looks like and what we can expect from both teams once the squad's released on Thursday. So nothing more to say. Thank you as always for joining us. Look forward to continuing the journey for the next few weeks and wrapping up the season whenever it may finish. And already starting to look forward to next year as well. We'll talk a little bit maybe on the squad show and the Patreon section this week about some of the obviously trade moves that Port Adelaide have made. Really, really mourning the loss of pick 103. Ye shall be missed. Maybe a little bit of chat about that later this week as well. We'll kind of review kind of all that stuff a little bit more in depth at a later point this year, before we take a little bit of a mini break over the summer. So lots still happening, lots still going on, a lot still happening for the AFLW women, and hopefully an entertaining match this weekend, and maybe we can pull off some kind of mini miracle and be reviewing something fun next week. That would be lovely. So until Thursday, thank you all. Appreciate your support.
Kind of pair.
Thank you, everyone.